Ron Greer, anchor on WSB-TV in Atlanta. Welcome to the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk-Young debate series from the studios of Georgia Public Broadcasting. This is the general election debate among candidates for Congressional District 13. District 13 covers South Cobb County and includes parts of Douglas, Clayton, and Henry counties. Now let's meet the candidates for this debate. They are in alphabetical order. Cesar Gonzales, a Republican, is a business owner. And David Scott, a Democrat, is the incumbent congressman from District 13. Congressman Scott declined to participate and is represented by an empty podium. Now let's meet our panelists. Sam Greenglass is a political reporter for WABE in Atlanta. And Tammy Joyner is a reporter for State Affairs in Atlanta. For complete rules on today's debate, please visit the Atlanta Press Club website, atlantapressclub.org/debates. To start the program, the candidate will be asked one question by each panelist. Mr. Gonzales will have 60 seconds to answer each question. Tammy Joyner, you get the first question to Cesar Gonzales.
Good afternoon, Mr. Gonzales. Thank you for coming. I wanted to ask you, you're new to politics. What experience would you bring to the office?
Well, certainly I bring, as a technician, as an engineer, I take a pragmatic approach. I assess a problem from all angles and formulate solutions in real time. That's been my job for 40-plus years, and this is what I will bring to the community in representing it effectively in Washington.
Sam Greenglass, it's your turn to ask a question to Cesar Gonzales.
This year, Governor Kemp signed into law legislation to allow permitless gun carry in the state of Georgia. Later in the summer, Congress passed a bipartisan gun safety measure. Should you go to Congress, do you support expanding gun access, leaving the laws untouched, or further restricting access to firearms in this country?
I would definitely support furthering gun access. I'm a believer in the Second Amendment, but I also look at it from several different angles. If we look at it like this, if you remove the right of citizens to protect themselves and their property, enabling the criminal element to terrorize them, necessity is going to establish a black market, the likes of which you've only seen in opiates. Okay, people will find a way to facilitate their needs. I think the Second Amendment should stay in place. I applaud Governor Kemp in his reiteration of constitutional carry. But more than that, having the Georgia legislation would still require that a purchase of a weapon have a background check. You're not going to just get a free pass with this one.
All right, that concludes our very short first round of the debate. This is normally the part of the debate where candidates question each other. Since David Scott chose not to participate, Cesar Gonzales, you may still ask your question to your opponent, who is represented by the empty podium. You also may share the rebuttal you would have given. You have 30 seconds to ask your question and 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
Well, if Governor Scott was here, if Representative Scott was here, I would ask him, your campaign mailer says that you brought $15.5 billion into the 13th Congressional District, which would have equated to over $21,000 per man, woman, and child. What would a community with that level of investment look like? And I say, looking at all the unfinished Job Corps facility in South Fulton, empty and abandoned businesses on Tara Boulevard, the lack of the promised Boys and Girls Clubs in the 13th District, manufacturers like Rivian electric vehicles locating elsewhere, one has to ask, where's that funding actually gone? Don't you have that question? I certainly do.
And you have time for a rebuttal, what you would have said if he were here?
That was the rebuttal.
That was your rebuttal. Okay. All right, that concludes our second round. And for those just joining us, this is the general election debate for Congressional District 13. We will now go back to the panel to ask questions to the candidate until we run out of time. As point of moderator privilege, I may also ask questions of the candidate as we move on. So Sam Greenglass, you get the first question in this round.
None of the Republicans in Georgia's congressional delegation voted for the bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed by Congress this year. Should you have been in Congress when this legislation came to the floor of the Capitol, would you have voted for it?
I wouldn't have voted for it. It was chock full of a lot of pork. There was a number of legislative rules and issues put in it that had nothing to do with infrastructure. And I don't see a point in labeling a bill, for example, the Inflation Reduction Act, when a majority of it has to do with green energy. You have bureaucrats actually setting legislation that only engineers, for example, like myself with my background and experience, can offer. I think this is a failing on the part of Congress. It's a failing on the part of legislation. And with my representation, I will see that changes, that we have bills in place, we have legislation in place that reflects the needs and concerns of the community at large.
Tammy Joyner, it's your turn to ask a question.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzales, one of your platforms has been to focus more on crime in District 13. What are your plans specifically to reduce gun violence in the district?
To reduce crime, you have to increase opportunity. Let's be honest. When you have a downturn in the economy, when you have the lack of resources, when you have the lack of opportunity, job opportunities and stuff, you have a consequent increase in crime. For that, my #1 platform issue will be to bring vocational education back into the district. I would like to see our youth and our displaced workers given job skills that will allow them to participate in the economy, to be able to be self-supportive and independent. I use myself as an example. When I was a youth, I was in a BOCES program, which is a vocational program that actually brought me off the street and gave me job skills that allowed me to be self-sustaining, and it was a gateway to future endeavors.
Let's talk about quickly, question here. You know, we know affordable housing is an issue all over the country. Here, it's definitely an issue. What would you do to help people be able to afford to live somewhere, you know, that they can afford in our community?
Well, like I said earlier, #1, vocational training, #2, job opportunity. Right now, the 13th Congressional District has only 2.8% of the working population have job skills, have marketable job skills. We're losing a lot of our businesses. We're being overlooked by a lot of manufacturers here because of that. When a manufacturer looks at a district to relocate, they look at whether there's a skilled worker base to support them. And we don't have that here.
Outside of jobs, though, to bring affordable housing into the district?
Interesting question. If you're training the people within the district, giving them the job skills they need, it allows them the opportunity to be able to afford that housing. You don't have gentrification. I know somebody asked me what gentrification had to do with anything, and I say this. If you're training your people from within the community, you don't have relocating businesses bringing skilled workers from outside the community, and it reduces that gentrification. But besides that, having affordable housing means that we have to improve the economy, our local economy, our local businesses. And that, in turn, will facilitate the ability for people to afford housing.
Mr. Greenglass?
Your opponent chairs one of the most powerful committees in Congress, the Agriculture Committee. Agriculture is an incredibly important industry in the state of Georgia. If you win, you'll have very little seniority in Congress. won't Georgians lose clout on this powerful committee that is incredibly important to the state?
That is an awesome question. Let me answer it by saying this. The 13th Congressional District, since redistricting, is less than 2% agricultural. My opponent, the 20-year incumbent's focus has been the agricultural sector. If you look at his FEC reports, a majority of his campaign funds come from big agriculture. My focus will be the growth and development of the 13th district. And that's where my focus should be. Thank you.
Tammy Joyner, you have the last question.
If elected, what do you hope to accomplish in District 13 that is not being done there now?
Well, quite simply, there is no real accountability and oversight of federal resources coming into the district. We have an incumbent that says he brought $15.5 billion into the district, but there's no accounting as to where it actually went. We have the squalor that is Terra Boulevard. We have South Fulton, where people are being run over because there are no sidewalks. We have construction that is languishing there. There's no continuation. We have a Job Corps facility that's basically hadn't been touched since 2020. And these are all federal projects. Where is the money? If you're going to solicit money on a suffrage of the inner city communities, then it should be directed to those inner city communities, not some pet projects or lost in some, what they call Atlanta politics.
Karen, can I
Yes.
just follow up? Mr. Gonzales, do you have a specific plan in place that would address these issues with regard to what you were just saying?
And you have 30 seconds to answer this one.
Okay. Yes, that's one of we're going to form a coalition within the 13th district to address all of these. When I'm in Washington, any legislation that I author will include the responsible delegation and disbursement of federal resources and any capital that may be coming in.
And that is all the time we have for questions. Mr. Gonzales, you have now 60 seconds for a closing statement.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank you all for this opportunity. I've lived in the 13th district for over 25 years. I saw it when it was flourishing, and I saw in the last 15 years when it was in a state of decline. The greatest long-term challenge facing the 13th district is purely economic. A direct correlation can be made between inflation, the drop in median incomes, the loss of job opportunities, and the consequent rise in crime. As a technician and a mechanical engineer, I look at problems from all angles and formulate pragmatic and effective solutions in real time. We have an incumbent representative whose health is declining, which I suspect is why he's not here. I want to take this opportunity to thank him for his 20 years of service in Congress, but now it is time for a representative who is more responsive to the needs and concerns of the community at large. Under my representation, the 13th District will set the standard in Metro Atlanta for growth and prosperity. Thank you.
And that concludes our debate. I want to remind voters Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th. Early voting begins October 17th. Have a great night.